The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 2, Dragon and Soldier. Chapter 15. Jack had never liked the woods. He'd never much liked the outdoors in general, for that matter. Nearly all of his life had been spent in cities or spaceports or in spaceships like the SNA, places with bright lights and people and no strange noises. Occasionally, when he and Uncle Virgil had been running a scam, they'd had to spend time in someone's country estate or mountain retreat, but at least there they'd mostly been inside at night. Nature had been something beyond the walls, safely out of view. His last brush with nature had been on Iota Clestes a month and a half ago. He'd taken a few short trips outside the ship, mostly during the day, but once or twice at night. That was how bored and restless he'd been. But at least there he'd had the comforting bulk of the SNA at his back, and Uncle Verge's watchful eye on the surrounding terrain. Uncle Verge. He stared out into the woods, an all too familiar pang of uncertainty and loss and fear whispering through him. The first time he'd felt it was back when he was 3 years old and finally realized that his parents weren't coming back for him. He'd felt it again a year ago at Uncle Virgil's death, when he'd suddenly found himself alone in the universe with nothing but a computerized personality to look after him. Now, here in the darkness of the night, he was feeling it for the third time, because whatever happened with Dracos, he knew deep down that his relationship with Uncle Verge had been changed forever. The thought was frightening and alien as the dark woods around him. Up to the time when he'd met Dracos, Jack's life had been fairly simple and more or less comfortable. For all the annoyances inherent in Uncle Verge's personality, the computer really was mostly easy to get along with. More to the point, he was the only friend Jack had. The strange noises of nature were beginning to whisper through the darkness around him. Mostly insects and small animals, he guessed, with an occasional bird or bat-like something flapping past overhead. Up above the trees, he could still see the sky, but here at ground level, it was already night. And then, suddenly, something big and heavy landed on the back of his neck. He jerked away with a gasp, his hand reaching automatically to swat it away, even as he realized it was just Dracos popping out from his jacket collar. "Man," he hissed, "don't do that!" "Do not do what?" Dracos asked, landing on the leaves behind him with a soft crunch. "Never mind," Jack growled, feeling like an idiot. "You startled me, that's all." The dragon cocked his head. "You do not like it out here," he declared. Jack snorted. "No kidding, Sherlock." "Pardon?" "Skip it." Shaking away the introspective thoughts, Jack stepped over to the Argus monitors for a closer look. There were two filters on each, he saw, neither of which could be slid over the image. Experimentally, he tried one. The image didn't change much. He tried the other, and suddenly the darkness was pockmarked with scattered bits of light. "Aha!" he said, feeling about as pleased as he could under the circumstances. "That's the infrared. The other one must be deep UV." "Pardon?" "UV is short for ultraviolet," Jack explained, sliding the infrared filters over the rest of the monitors. "It's a kind of light we can't see directly, but there are some species and some kinds of equipment that show up real well with it." "And infrared?" "Infrared is heat," Jack told him, peering at each of the monitors in turn. Nothing but small animals and birds, at least as far as he could see. Anything warm gives that off. Those thugs who were looking for us back in Vargan were using IR detectors. Back when we were hiding out at the Wistwaki balcony, remember? "Yes," Draco said. "I was somewhat surprised at the time that they did not locate us." Jack shrugged. "You probably don't look like anything anyone's ever seen before. Matter of fact, you might not even look alive. We'd have to do a heat profile on you to know for sure. Either way, I guarantee you don't look like a human." "That could be useful." "It already has been," Jack pointed out. "True." Draco studied the monitors. "The images are not very clear." "They sure aren't," Jack agreed. "I guess that's the best you can do without electronics and power sources." The dragon hopped up onto a nearby stump and craned his neck. "Perhaps I should explore the perimeter." "Oh, no," Jack said quickly. "Forget it. You just stay put right here. Dracos twisted his head around to look back at him. You do not need to be afraid, Jack, he said, his voice low and soothing. I am a poet warrior of the Kada. I will protect you. I appreciate your confidence, Jack said, but Good Intentions Highway isn't one I want to travel just yet. The tip of Dracos's tail twitched. Do you refer to the saying the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Jack frowned. Yeah, where did you hear that? Uncle Verge quoted it to me, the dragon said. From his stump, he jumped up onto the side of one of the trees and clung there by his claws, gazing out into the night. During one of your late-night poetry sessions? Yes, he has many such sayings with which to illustrate his points. Jack felt his mouth twist. Let me guess. His main point is that he wants you to go away and leave us alone. That is the core of it, Dracos confirmed. He does not feel that the survival of my people should be of any concern to you. Somewhere ahead, a twig suddenly snapped. Jack jerked, snatching up his gompers and pointing it into the darkness. Do not be afraid, Dracos assured him quickly. It was merely a small animal obtaining a meal. Jack lowered the flash rifle, letting his breath out silently. Okay, he said. Dracos pushed off the tree trunk and dropped back down to Jack's side. I do not understand your fear, he said, looking up at Jack's face. I would have thought that in your previous profession, you must have faced danger many times. Not like this, Jack said, shaking his head. I was always a kid before. Even when we were breaking into bank vaults, I knew the police weren't going to shoot unless I pointed a gun at them or tried to get away. He plucked at a fold of his uniform jacket. Here, it's all different. Here, I'm a target. Not because I'm breaking any laws, but because I'm wearing this uniform. Just because I'm wearing this uniform. That is the way of the soldier, Dracos reminded him. Part of your task is to draw danger away from the weak and powerless. Jack snorted. Just what I've always wanted. Dracos cocked his head. It is an honorable profession, Jack. Maybe where you come from it is, Jack retorted. Is it not so here? How would I know? Jack sighed. All right, yeah, I suppose it is, he conceded. At least most of the time, but we sure don't seem very popular here on Sunright. I do not understand. You saw the people on the march through town today, Jack said. Well, no, you probably didn't. The point is that they weren't exactly cheering us on. One does not usually cheer in the middle of an attack. This was before the attack, Jack told him. They were just staring at us, watching us march, like we were invaders instead of protectors. He snorted. After the attack, it was even worse. Then they were afraid to even get near us. Dracos was silent a moment. You are mercenaries, not regular soldiers, he pointed out. Perhaps that is the difference. Maybe, Jack said. I don't know. But according to Uncle Verge's history lessons, people sometimes treated regular soldiers the same way when they were in a war the people didn't like. That is wrong, Draco said firmly. The soldiers deserve the respect and honor of the people they defend. If the war is wrong or misguided, the people's objections should be directed at the leaders. Hey, I'm just telling you how it is, Jack said. I don't write the history, I just report it. I understand, Dracos murmured. He hopped up onto his stump again, peering off into the night. Jack found himself studying the dragon's silhouette, a black shadow against a slightly lighter background. It was different for you, wasn't it? He asked. I mean, your people were fighting for their lives. That must make a difference. It does, Dracos agreed. There were still objections at times, of course, but they were settled by the leaders. Pretty quickly, I'd guess, Jack said. Did all of you have to become warriors?
All had to have soldiers' training,
Draco said. His voice was soft and oddly distant.
Those who did not serve directly were required to fill support positions. There was no other way.
I suppose, Jack said. So when Dracos called himself a poet warrior, it wasn't really that big a deal? Or was it maybe the poet part he was so proud of? So basically, any Kada can do what you do? The dragon seemed to draw himself up.
Not at all,
He said stiffly.
All indeed can become soldiers, but not all are warriors.
Jack frowned. What's the difference?
A warrior of the Kada is a special person,
Dracos explained, and there was no mistaking the pride in his voice.
He or she has certain inborn talents and abilities, plus the desire to turn those talents in the direction of protecting the Kada people. We are found at an early age and offered this position.
The tip of his tail twitched.
No, Jack. One without poetic talent may be able to make two sentences rhyme on occasion, but you would not call him a poet with the true gift of poetry. So is the difference between soldier and warrior.
Jack nodded. He'd tried writing a poem once, back when he was 10. The result had been pretty pitiful. So how old were you when they started your training? He asked. You said once you were younger than I was when you had your first battle.
That is true,
Dracos acknowledged.
I was not yet a warrior at that time, though, but was still in training. My full training lasted for nearly 4 years.
4 years?
Yes,
The dragon said.
Though I was, of course, a soldier during much of that time. We could not afford for warriors in training to merely be students during a war for survival.
Yeah, Jack murmured. 4 years compared to the 10 days he'd just gone through. I guess I must seem pretty pathetic to you. I'm barely even a soldier, let alone a warrior.
You do as well as your abilities allow,
Draco said diplomatically.
Your talents lie in other areas.
Right, Jack said with a sigh. And I'd bet you'd trade 3 of me right now for a single good soldier.
Perhaps that could be arranged,
The dragon suggested dryly.
Shall I go get Allison?
Jack glared at him, a waste of effort in the darkness. Very funny. From behind them came the faint sound of lifters. There goes the lynx, Jack commented, turning to look. But nothing could be seen through the trees. The sound changed pitch as the transport shifted to horizontal motion and headed away from the camp. Jack looked up, trying to catch a glimpse of it through the trees. Again, nothing. Could you tell which direction it was headed?
From the sound, it appeared to be traveling southwest,
The dragon said. Back to Merseb, Jack said. Somehow, the sound of the departing shuttle made the darkness out here seem a little deeper. Well, good luck to them. They're sure not going to find a welcome carpet spread out.
Do you refer to the citizens?
Dracos asked.
Or do you expect another Shamshir attack?
I was talking about the people, Jack said. But as long as you brought it up, I did overhear Lieutenant Bash telling someone they'd found 2 Shamshir mercenaries in one of the buildings. They'd been knocked cold, but they weren't hurt otherwise. Your handiwork?
Yes,
Draco said.
The tides of warfare flowed into my advantage.
Whatever, Jack said. How come you didn't kill them? The dragon's tail arched.
There was no need. I wished merely to halt their attack. That I did.
Yeah, but they'd already killed about 10 edgemen, Jack pointed out. I thought you didn't approve of killers.
I do not approve of murderers,
Dracos corrected.
There is a difference between murder and warfare.
That's not what some of our people say, Jack told him. This was, he realized dimly, a pretty stupid argument to be having at a time like this, especially out here with him wearing a soldier's uniform and carrying a soldier's gun. There was something about the darkness and the noises that was making him unusually talkative tonight. Or maybe it was the silence between the noises that he was trying to fill. There are people, a lot of people, who think warfare is just the government's way of.
Quiet!
Dracos cut him off. He twisted his head away from Jack, his pointed ears suddenly standing straight up. For a second, Jack stared past him into the darkness. There was nothing out there he could see. Then suddenly his brain caught up with him and he turned instead to the Argus monitors. The dragon was right. Something had moved into view on one of the monitors. The image was fuzzy, but it definitely had the basic shape of a human being, and it was moving toward the camp. Moving toward Jack. He flipped up the schematic showing where the Argus eyes were positioned. His pulse thudded hard into his neck. Okay, this was eye number 3. That was there, which meant the figure coming toward him must be there. He didn't realize Dracos had moved to his side until the dragon spoke.
They are approaching,
he murmured, his breath warm in Jack's ear. Jack's pulse picked up speed.
They?
He muttered back. There's more than one? The dragon's tongue flicked out at one of the other monitors.
There,
he said.
And there,
he added, pointing to another. Jack gripped his flash rifle like he was trying to squeeze it in half. There were 2 more figures, all right, half hidden behind rocks or trees. Even as he focused on one of them, it moved away from its hiding place and crossed quickly to another one. How many are there? He asked. There was no answer. Dracos? He repeated, twisting around. The dragon was gone. Dracos! He called as loudly as he dared, his eyes darting around the darkness. The Kada had vanished, all right, probably gone ahead to check on the intruders. Jack hissed between his teeth. Suddenly, he felt very exposed out here, standing in the faint glow from the Argus monitors. He stepped away from them as quietly as he could, cringing every time his feet crunched into the leaves. A few feet away was the tree stump Dracos had been perched on earlier. He dropped down behind it, clutching the flash rifle as if his life depended on it. Which it probably did. All right, Jack, calm down, he told himself sternly. 3 of them wasn't too bad. That was all there were. It could be just a quick scouting party, with none of them actually looking for a fight. If that was all there were. He looked over his shoulder at the Argus monitors, but here at the stump he was too far away to see them clearly. What he needed was to be over there watching the monitors, with Dracos nearby to protect his back. Except Dracos was off who know where, doing who know what. Blast the dragon anyway. Of all the times for him to run off and play soldier. And then, from somewhere ahead, somewhere very close ahead, came the soft sound of a footstep.